Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to hold talks with India's leaders in New Delhi at the start of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's third term in office. Ukraine summit strives for consensus, but way forward is uncertain after India and much of the global south do not support a joint communique. A tactical pause in fighting to allow aid into Gaza triggers a spat between Israel's army and government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denounces the decision. Meanwhile, the army says military operations will continue in Rafah. And President Draupadi Murmu of India leads the nation in greeting people on the festival of Eid-ul-Adha. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is visiting New Delhi on Monday for talks with the country's leadership at the start of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's third term in office. It will be the first trip to India by a senior US government official after Prime Minister Modi came to power for a third term. Sullivan will participate in a second meeting of the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. He will meet his Indian counterpart Ajit Doval. This meeting will be followed by a joint statement between the two nations underscoring the progress made and the importance of the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies mechanism for the two countries. Earlier on 6th June, US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi discussed Sullivan's upcoming visit to New Delhi during a call made by President Biden to congratulate Prime Minister Modi on his electoral win. A two-day meeting called the Summit on Peace in Ukraine concluded in Switzerland on Sunday. More than 90 countries signed a joint communique that lays out a possible roadmap for a resolution of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But it lacks unanimity, for one, because it agreed at a summit where Russia was not invited. Amish Mahajan reports.
The Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland has successfully concluded with over 90 countries signing the final declaration. Swiss President Viola Amherd presented the key points of the communique, emphasizing the importance of the safe use of nuclear power, the protection of shipping navigation routes, and the return of unlawfully displaced children and detained civilians.
We have managed to agree on a common vision here on the Bürgenstock. We have set out that vision in the Bürgenstock communique. Here we are sending a clear signal to the people of Ukraine and to all those directly affected by the consequences of the war. A large part of the international community has the desire to bring change.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised the support from Western and other leaders at the summit, highlighting that this collective effort underscores the potential to restore the rule of international law.
That we can achieve results as soon as possible. And it is exactly these and other similar practical steps to restore security and peace that will prove to everyone in the world that the UN Charter can be restored to full effectiveness. All the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini!
Meanwhile, Russia has expressed its willingness to engage in talks with Ukraine. However, it stressed the necessity of guarantees to ensure the credibility and seriousness of any forthcoming negotiations.
Putin is not rejecting anything. He is not rejecting the possibility of talks. He says there are legitimate bodies there in accordance with the country's constitution, who is authorized to conduct negotiations, etc. Negotiations, as a rule, are conducted by expert people, but the results of negotiations are recorded by legitimate. Agreements on paper are the fruit of very complex expert negotiations, a balance of interests, and of course, taking into account the realities on the ground. And this will be the case this time as well.
As the summit comes to an end, the international community remains hopeful that these declarations and commitments will pave the way for lasting peace and stability in the region. With Bureau Inputs, Amish Mahajan's report for DD India.
Switzerland's foreign minister has said that talks aimed at paving the way for peace in Ukraine is conceivable before the US presidential election in November.
Yes, I guess it is conceivable that such a conference could be organized before the US elections. It depends on the willingness of the organizing states, of Ukraine, and of the big powers.
For her part, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said that the summit has brought peace closer to Ukraine, but path to real peace will require patience and determination.
Our support and this peace summit here brings real peace closer. The goal is a just, comprehensive, and lasting peace. This would finally bring an end to the oppression and suffering of the Ukrainian people. This would reaffirm Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And this would restore the primacy of international law and the UN Charter. The path to real peace requires patience and determination.
Let me pull up some graphics on that meeting for you. India participated in the Switzerland-hosted summit on peace in Ukraine on the 15th and 16th of June. And Indian diplomat Pavan Kapoor represented India at the summit. India did not associate itself with a joint communique issued towards the end of the two-day talks. At the summit, India called for a peaceful resolution of the conflict through dialogue and diplomacy. India pitched for sincere and practical engagement between both the parties to the conflict, calling it essential for achieving a resolution. And last but not the least, India said it is committed to engaging with all stakeholders and both parties involved, contributing earnestly towards achieving an early and abiding peace. To West Asia now, where Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday denounced military's plans to hold daily pauses in fighting along one of the main roads into Gaza to facilitate aid delivery into the enclave. The reaction from Netanyahu underlined political tensions over the issue of aid for Gaza, where international organizations have warned of a growing humanitarian crisis. Israel's National Security Advisor Itamar Ben-Gvir also denounced the idea of a tactical pause. He said that whoever decided it was a fool who should lose their job. The military had announced the daily pauses in the area from the Kerem Shalom crossing to the Salah al-Din road and then northwards. The military clarified that normal operations would continue in Rafah, which is its main focus of its operation in southern Gaza. 8 soldiers were killed on Saturday in this area. As fighting in Gaza continued, conflict across the Israel-Lebanon border is now threatening to spiral into a wider war as near daily exchanges of fire between Israeli forces and the Hezbollah militia have escalated. A dense cloud of smoke was seen rising over the hilly frontier in southern Lebanon on Sunday. Last week, the Hezbollah launched the largest volley of rockets and drones yet in the 8 months it has been exchanging fire with the Israeli military in parallel to the Gaza war. The US and France are working on a negotiated settlement to the hostilities along the Lebanese southern border. Hezbollah said it will not halt fire unless Israel stops its military offensive on Gaza. For its part, an Israeli military official said Israel will take the necessary measures to protect its civilians until security along the country's border with Lebanon is restored. An advisor to the US president is traveling to Israel on Monday for meetings to avoid a further escalation along the blue line between Israel and Lebanon. Attacks between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon have led to worries of a deeper war across West Asia. Mourners attended an emotional funeral in Israel on Sunday for a military officer killed in Rafah. The funeral was held in the Mount Herzl cemetery, where the soldier's sister delivered a eulogy, calling him the best brother ever. The soldier, who was posthumously promoted to sergeant, was killed along with 7 other soldiers in southern Gaza on Saturday.
The best brother ever. You are very talented and such a good builder. You have such an amazing personality. תמיד אוהב לעזור לאנשים אחרים עם חיוך על הפנים, ועשה זאת בצניעות ובענווה. תודה שהיית הכי טוב בעולם ותמיד תהיה איתי בלב.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Italy hopes to build 20 mini nuclear reactors in the UK. A wildfire in the US state of California forces the evacuation of more than 1,000 people. And France plans to protect children from too much screen time.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. In the Indo-Pacific, maritime tensions between China and the Philippines seem to be intensifying in the South China Sea. Only this time, China accused the Philippines of an intrusion. China's Coast Guard alleged on Monday that a Filipino ship illegally intruded into waters adjacent to the second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea. The Filipino transport and replenishment ship allegedly ignored China's repeated warnings. The Chinese Coast Guard said that the vessel deliberately and dangerously approached a Chinese ship in an unprofessional manner, resulting in a collision. Loudspeakers deployed by South Korea to wage a psychological warfare against North Korea faced audits and legal battles, claiming that they are too quiet. It's raised questions over how far into the reclusive North their propaganda messages can blast. South Korea resumed loudspeaker broadcasts directed at North Korea on 9th June for the first time since a now-defunct inter-Korean agreement banned them in 2018. The current speakers were among 40 systems purchased in 2016 after the two Koreas exchanged artillery fire in a 2015 dispute over the broadcasts. The military said that the systems were designed to blare pop music and political messages as far as 10 kilometers, but audits released at the time showed the new speakers did not meet those standards and were not as powerful as the military called for. North Korea's own loudspeakers in the area further diminished the reach of South Korea's psychological warfare. North Korea's broadcasts are less aimed at winning over people in the South and more at suppressing the South's broadcast by overpowering or muddling the message. South Africa's MK party decided to join an alliance of smaller opposition parties in parliament in a bid to take on the African National Congress and Democratic Alliance-led coalition government. The ANC and its largest rival, the white-led pro-business Democratic Alliance, agreed on Friday to work together in a coalition it called the Government of National Unity, a major change after 30 years of ANC rule. Former President Jacob Zuma's MK party came in a surprisingly strong third in the 29th May election, which saw the ANC lose its majority. The MK party won 14.6% of the vote, which translated into 58 seats in the 400-seat National Assembly. But MK lawmakers boycotted the first sitting of the country's legislature on Friday after filing a complaint at the country's top court, alleging vote rigging, which the court dismissed as without merit. Thailand's courts will convene on a trio of politically charged cases this week, including dissolution of an opposition political party and one that could potentially lead to the Prime Minister's dismissal. It may all increase the prospect of more government instability in the Southeast Asian country. The Constitutional Court in Thailand is set to begin its deliberation of the dissolution of the opposition Move Forward party. The court agreed to take on the complaint filed by the Election Commission asking to disband Move Forward party. It was alleged that the party ran a controversial campaign to reform a law that shields the country's monarchy from criticism. The case came after a January ruling by the same court that found Move Forward's plan to amend the law was unconstitutional and tantamount to an attempt to overthrow the system of government with the king as head of state. Move Forward has rejected that. Move Forward pulled off a stunning feat in winning last year's election but was blocked from forming a government by lawmakers allied with the royalist military. It's the biggest party in the lower chamber of Thailand's legislature with about 30% of seats. Thailand's Attorney General will indict a former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra for allegedly insulting the monarchy. It appears to be a setback to a political heavyweight whose loyalists are currently in government. The complaint was lodged by the royalist military that ousted the government of his sister Yingluck Shinawatra. It had stemmed from an interview the influential tycoon gave to foreign media in 2015. 74-year-old Thaksin denies wrongdoing and has repeatedly pledged his loyalty to the crown. Thaksin would be the highest profile case among more than 270 prosecutions in recent years under the controversial law, which carries a maximum jail term of 15 years for each perceived insult of the royal family. Meanwhile, Thailand's Constitutional Court will also hear a case on Tuesday that could lead to the dismissal of Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin. It related to a cabinet appointment that is alleged to have violated the constitution. The case against Srettha was launched following a complaint by 40 military-appointed lawmakers in May, which was subsequently accepted by the Constitutional Court. Australia and China signed 5 memoranda of understanding, including trade, climate change and the economy, on Monday during a state visit by Chinese Premier Li Qiang to Canberra. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese gave a ceremonial welcome to Li, marked with a cannon salute followed by an inspection of the Guard of Honour. Li then signed the visitor's book. This is a first such visit by a Chinese premier to Australia in 7 years that marks a stabilization in relations between the US security ally and the world's second biggest economy. An Italian nuclear energy firm is hoping to build 20 mini reactors in the UK. The company, called Neocleo, has signed a partnership to work on a so-called fourth-generation nuclear reactor in Italy. While countries such as France are trying to expand their already extensive nuclear power capacity, Italy is the only G7 member that does not have a single operational nuclear plant. Giles Gibson reports from Rome.
This is the Lakeside Research Centre where scientists are trying to push Italy back into the nuclear age. Private company Nucleo has partnered up with Enea, the Italian government's research agency, to develop smaller fourth-generation nuclear power plants. Instead of using water, the reactors are cooled with liquid lead, which researchers say is much more efficient.
Fourth-generation reactors have another objective: close the fuel cycle. That's why they changed from a water coolant to a liquid metal coolant, sodium or lead. And in this way you can use all the compressed fuel to make an entire reactor charge. It therefore becomes convenient because it doesn't waste fuel. but it reprocesses it and puts it back into circulation. So the goal of the fourth generation is this, while maintaining the safety standards of the third generation.
Italy started building nuclear power plants in the early 1960s, but after a couple of decades, they became politically radioactive.
In 1987, just a year after the Chernobyl disaster, the Italian government held a referendum on nuclear power. And while citizens weren't actually asked whether they wanted to ban it outright, the results led to the final nuclear power station in Italy closing its doors in 1990.
In 2009, the government at the time started looking into building new plants, but the Fukushima disaster in Japan was just around the corner. Another referendum in 2011, in the wake of Fukushima, put a stop to the government's plans. Today, nuclear scientists say the public needs to be educated about this new generation of plants.
From the physical point of view, in principle, a fourth-generation reactor is not very different from previous reactors, because the type of nuclear reaction that takes place inside of them is exactly the same. The difference is in the technological solutions adopted. So rather than a different way of working, from the operational point of view, we talk about new, advanced, safer technological solutions.
While supporters of nuclear power say it could play a key part in decarbonising major economies, environmental groups say it produces huge amounts of toxic waste. While Italy's energy mix is still heavily reliant on natural gas, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government has been laying the groundwork in Parliament for nuclear power to potentially be switched back on. But even the researchers themselves admit it could be a decade before the first new plant comes online. Giles Gibson in Rome, reporting for DD India.
Killed at least 6 people and left 30 others missing. The large magnitude landslide occurred in the city of Banos de Agua Santa. A heavy rainstorm caused by low pressure swept across parts of Central and South America on Sunday, with various countries warning of the increased risk of landslides, rockfalls and flooding. In El Salvador, the country's Civil Protection Agency declared a red alert because of heavy rains throughout the nation, while in neighboring Guatemala, several airlines diverted their flights. A wildfire burning northwest of the U.S. city of Los Angeles on Sunday forced the evacuation of more than 1,000 people from a popular outdoor recreation area and burned more than 12,000 acres. The fire, which started Saturday afternoon local time, is moving to the southeast towards Pyramid Lake. Some 1,200 people have been evacuated from the Hungry Valley recreation area, which has trails for motorcycles and off-road vehicles since the fire broke out. 2 structures have been destroyed so far. Efforts to contain the wildfire are being hampered by high temperatures, low humidity and strong winds forecast to continue through Sunday night local time. Water-dropping aircraft are working to halt forward the progress of the fire, while firefighters are constructing perimeter fire lines in an effort to get the blaze under more control. Desertification and drought, especially in Nigeria's northeast region, is leading to migration of cattle herders to areas where the pasture is lush. Now, this has led to conflict between crop farmers and herders over the battle for land, relating to deaths and reduced food production. Climatologists are seeking policies such as ranching for herders as a way out of the situation. Tessem Akende has more from Jos in Nigeria.
Herder Abdul Bello is out with his cattle on the outskirts of Jos for pasture. He relocated from Bauchi in the country's northeast due to encroaching desertification and drought.
This is our source of livelihood, raising cows and selling them. Here in Plateau State, it rains well, so there is good pasture for cattle. In other parts of the country, especially in the far north, cows just die due to lack of water for them to drink and hunger.
Bello is among thousands of herders who are now grazing in Nigeria's north-central states like Plateau and Benue. Having migrated from the northeast Sahel region, It has triggered eco-related conflicts between them and crop farmers in host communities.
The plants don't get to mature to their full capacity before the rain stops. So one of the key problems that we have faced here is, of course, the issue of the drought, basically caused by climate change and, of course, land degradation, leading to shortage of rainfall.
According to the country's House of Representatives, over 60,000 lives have been lost due to clashes between farmers and herders since 2001. This has jeopardized food production, leading to soaring food prices and hunger. Climate experts say solutions exist.
We can actually encourage herders to see how they can get the best of their herds by keeping them in one place and then, of course, feeding them better and then getting the resources out of their herds, such as milk and meat that they can use into creating various other products.
The government has warned that herders face arrest if they let their cattle stray into farms. The president has also called on state governors, who are statutorily the custodians of land, to make it available for herders to graze on in a way that won't lead to conflict between farmers. Some governors have instituted a ban on open grazing, calling on private investments in ranches for cattle herding. But other states are yet to do so, leaving herders like Abdul Bello to search for pasture for their cows. Tassim Akende in Jos, reporting for DD India.
France is planning to try to restrict children's access to social media. The country's president says that young people are at risk from harm online. Emmanuel Macron asked a commission of experts to examine the risks to children of spending too much time on screens, and they have recommendations for a new legislation. Ross Cullen has more from Paris.
From social media to online gaming and watching videos, screens now dominate a large part of our lives. But it's the impact on children's development that is worrying the French government. In a major speech last month, the French president said that the legal age for using social media should be no younger than 15.
And today, for several hours a day, we open the door to the jungle. And that same person could be a victim of cyberbullying, or subject to pornographic material or pedocriminality. That's what the online space is, because it's not regulated, and it is not moderated either.
In April, a survey by French public health authorities showed that 2-year-olds in France spend about an hour a day in front of a screen. For child psychiatrist Anne Siniquier, it's a problem that must be addressed.
These screens are a bit hypnotic for children. There is lots of light, movement, bright colors, lots of sound. I mean, just look at a child watching TV. You can call them 100 times, and they won't respond in any way because they are completely hypnotized.
In 2023, the government said it wanted to introduce prevention messages on computers, tablets and phones to advise consumers in a similar way to the warnings on tobacco products. And protecting young people from too much screen time has cross-party support. Earlier this year, the opposition Republican Party tabled a bill calling for a ban on screens in nurseries for children under 3. Some of the new laws could include no screens for the under 3s, smartphones only being allowed for those under the age of 13, and a recommendation not to use Instagram or TikTok if you're under the age of 18. Ross Cullen in Paris, reporting for DD India.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour. Indian Railways on track to create a record. The world's highest steel arch rail bridge nears completion. No sign of respite from scorching heat in northern India. And the timeless practice of oneness and harmony with yoga celebrations across the world. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to hold talks with India's leaders in New Delhi at the start of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's third term in office. Ukraine summit strives for consensus, but way forward is uncertain after India and much of the global south do not support a joint communique. A tactical pause in fighting to allow aid into Gaza triggers a spat between Israel's army and government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denounces the decision. Meanwhile, the army says military operations will continue in Rafah. And President Draupadi Murmu of India leads the nation in greeting people on the festival of Eid-ul-Adha. All right, going back to the top story we are tracking here on DD India News Hour, that of the maritime tensions between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea. Joining me is my colleague Laura Westbrook, who is in Hong Kong. Laura, why are the tensions escalating between the two countries in question, and what's the root cause of it all?
Yes, well, we've just heard reports today from China's Coast Guard that it claims that a Philippine ship has bumped into it in these disputed waters in the South China Sea. Now, this comes after on Saturday, China's Coast Guard said that it's implemented these new rules that allows its Coast Guard to detain foreigners in the South China Sea. It says that foreign ships that illegally entered China's territorial waters and adjacent waters may be detained. And this also comes after the Philippines on Saturday submitted a legal filing to the United Nations for its own maritime entitlement to an extended continental shelf in the disputed waters. It also said the defense minister also says that they will be looking to take measures to protect the fishermen in the South China Sea. This is an extremely important waterway. Trillions of dollars of trade pass through it every year. It's also an extremely important fishing waterway as well. China claims almost all the South China Sea, but the Philippines and other countries also have these competing claims. And as we've seen in recent days and even in recent weeks, there has been this sort of escalating tension between these two sides, between the Philippines and China, with both sides being increasingly assertive in their claims in the South China Sea.
Now, talking about this latest provocation or a flashpoint, as it were, Laura, is there any truth at all to China's latest claims, and has Manila responded to these claims yet?
So this is coming from China's state media that has said that has claimed that a Philippine ship has bumped into one of its ships in this disputed South China Sea. We've not heard yet from the Philippines, but we'll wait and watch to hear. But this really is sort of the latest in these increasingly tense and frequent encounters between these two sides. We've seen the Chinese Coast Guard use water cannon. They've also had collisions with Philippine vessels. That has also injured some Philippine fishermen and Philippine people as well on those ships. And we have also heard from the G7 over the weekend, where they said that they criticized these dangerous incursions by China in the waterway. China, though, has defended these new Coast Guard rules that allows it to detain foreigners that it says are illegally trespassing in its waters. It says that these were better intended to better uphold order at the sea, saying that it has been that its limits its limits have been, it has limits to its restraint in the South China Sea. But we really are seeing a more assertive Philippines, especially with the backing of the United States. President Marcos has said that he will defend his sovereignty in the South China Sea. And we've also heard from the defense minister over the past week, who has said that China's claims represent an existential threat existential threat in these contested waters. So this really is an issue that looks like it's not going away, and the worry for many and the looming threat is that these increasingly combative encounters could escalate into something bigger.
All right, we leave it at that. Thank you, Laura. That was Laura Westbrook reporting from Hong Kong. Moving on to some other stories, this time from India. The country's Home Minister Amit Shah chaired a meeting to review security and logistics arrangements for a pilgrimage to the Hindu shrine of Amarnath that's located in Jammu and Kashmir. The minister instructed security agencies to be vigilant and ensure sufficient deployment of security personnel for the pilgrimage. He called for establishing a perfect inter-agency coordination for effective security arrangements, including a well-established standard operating response mechanism. The minister said that Indian government is committed to ensuring a convenient and hassle-free experience for pilgrims and adopt eco-friendly measures in the management of the pilgrimage. The pilgrimage to the cave shrine of Amarnath would commence on the 29th of June. Jammu and Kashmir has made elaborate arrangements for a smooth conduct of the pilgrimage, including seamless registration, convoy movement, camping facilities, medical facilities, upgrading the tracks, providing power and water supply, and mobile phone connectivity. The first ever direct flight between India and Cambodia was launched on Sunday. The flight was inaugurated by Cambodia's Deputy Prime Minister Net Savyun and India's ambassador to Cambodia, Devyani Khobragade. In a social media post, the Indian Embassy in Cambodia said this move marks the start of the first tourism year and will boost tourism and people-to-people connections. The embassy hailed it as a historic moment, citing India's Act East policy. The flight between the two capitals will be operated 4 times a week by Cambodia's national flag carrier, Cambodia Angkor Air. Crossing the world's highest steel arch rail bridge over the Chenab River, India's Railway Ministry has successfully conducted an electric engine trial from Sangaldan to Riyasi. The 46-kilometer stretch would be inspected over 2 days as the ministry gets closer to its ambitious project. The first train between Sangaldan and Riyasi is probably going to operate on the 30th of June after a successful trial of an electric engine on the route. Weather updates from across India now. The India Meteorological Department has issued heat wave to severe heat wave warnings for the entire northern region. Heat wave to severe heat wave warnings issued for most parts of Uttar Pradesh till 18th of June, while heat wave conditions very likely in Punjab, Haryana and Delhi till Monday and decrease in intensity thereafter. As per a weather report, heat wave conditions are also expected to continue in Jammu Division, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh till Monday and abate thereafter. The IMD also predicted that northeastern states along with West Bengal, Odisha will receive heavy to very heavy rainfall in the next 4 to 5 days. The flood situation in the northeastern Indian state of Assam worsened as new areas submerged underwater because of incessant rain in the last couple of days across the state. Almost 6,000 people have been affected in 93 villages. Widespread to moderate rainfall is forecast over most of the northeastern states of India, including Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya and Nagaland in the next 5 days. And joining me is my colleague Subina Roy. Subina, what more can you tell us about the situation in the state as we speak?
Good morning, Ramesh. The situation in Assam deteriorated since the past few days as heavy rains have been occurring in the state, and around 6,000 people have been affected due to the recent rains, and affecting around 93 villages. So if we talk about the 7 districts have been affected, talking about Karimganj is the most affected with around 77 villages affected in that particular district and affecting around more than 20,000 people in that district itself. And talking about Borpeta, in Borpeta, around 1,800 people are flood affected. Yesterday, 3 relief camps were set up in Karimganj where around over 900 people are residing in this relief camps. Ramesh, talking about the overall northeastern region, the IMD has issued a red alert for the sub-Himalayan West Bengal region and Sikkim and Assam and Meghalaya. So in Assam and Meghalaya, 15th and 16th, very heavy to heavy rainfall, and extreme heavy rainfall is supposed to occur, is predicted to be occurred in Assam and Meghalaya today and tomorrow. And Arunachal Pradesh, the IMD has issued an orange alert and heavy rainfall is expected today and tomorrow. Talking about Nagaland, Mizoram, Tripura, heavy rainfall at isolated places are supposed to occur today and tomorrow. However, if you see at the overall trend, the IMD, one of the IMD reports says that from 2001 to 2021, the average rainfall in Northeast has decreased. So it is it has become a rain deficit area. However, flooding is a problem. A little bit of rains and then flood occurs, especially in the urban areas like Guwahati and Dibrugarh.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I will have to leave it at that. Subina, thank you. Appreciate it. Subina Roy there reporting from Assam. In other news, more than 1,200 tourists are stranded at Lachung in the northeastern Indian state of Sikkim. Most parts of the region remained cut off because of damages on roads, bridges and human habitations suffered during landslides since last weekend. The state government has requested an Indian Air Force helicopter. As soon as the weather improves, the rescue operation will be initiated. And now to all the updates on the International Day of Yoga, which will be celebrated on the 21st of June. Originating from the roots of the ancient Upanishad, yoga's enduring practice has surpassed cultural confines. The establishment of the International Day of Yoga underscores its widespread acceptance and positive impact. DD India Sujata Lochab delves deeper into the evolution and significance of yoga, shedding light on its transformative journey through centuries.
History of yoga is as old as human civilization, certainly much older than archaeological records. In Harappa, the sculpture of meditating yogi and seal of yogi found in Mohenjo-daro is probably the most ancient record, which dates back to 3000 BC. The root of yoga is in Upanishads, where we find detailed descriptions of Ashtanga Yoga, also known as the 8 limbs of yoga, describing 72,000 human nerves and yoga feet. The Upanishadic truth of prana or vital forces was taught in Bhagavad Gita in detail. Lord Krishna says, Pranapano samokritva nasa bhyantar charino shutting out all external contacts and fixing the gaze between the eyebrows. By controlling the movements of breath, one conquer chief prana and becomes immortal. Such yogi never ages and lives for thousands of years. The purpose of yoga is not only to obtain immortality, but also to make body, mind and heart healthy and disease-free. The father of modern yoga, Patanjali, the Indian sage who is believed to have authored a number of Sanskrit works on yoga around 200 BCE, most prominent of which is Yoga Sutras. He assimilated yoga into the system for the common masses. The purpose of yoga is absolute happiness. Yoga is boon for humanity because it helps one avoid all kinds of misery. Gautam Buddha's first teacher was the yoga guru, Arad Kalma, who was an accomplished Hatha yogi. Buddha learnt Ashtanga yoga from him and later through Upanishadic Dhyana yoga he accomplished nirvana. All Jain Tirthankaras were accomplished yogins. In modern times, Swami Vivekananda popularized yoga and dhyana in West during 20th century. Vivekananda's Raj Yoga is one of the modern classics on yoga written for Western world. Later Indian sannyasis and yogins like Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Sivananda Saraswati, B.K.S. Iyengar, Mahesh Yogi, Swami Kaivalyananda followed him and taught it to the Western world. Yoga Guru B.K.S. Iyengar was the first who achieved fame as Yoga Guru in West and taught yoga to several celebrities, politicians, famous philosophers like Aldous Huxley, violinist Yehudi Menuhin, and even Queen Elizabeth of Belgium. Later, Mahesh Yogi rocked America with his yoga mission. In the 60s and 70s, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi achieved fame as the guru to the Beatles, the Beach Boys and other celebrities.
To attain this, they have to have a deep and clear experience of being.
In present times, there are many gurus who are making yoga popular in India and West both. They made it part of lifestyle and made easy yoga available to households. But yoga became world famous and reached every corner of the world because of the efforts of India's Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi. It is his effort that United Nations General Assembly unanimously passed and adopted International Yoga Day in 2014. The first International Yoga Day was celebrated successfully on June 21, 2015 across the world, including New York, Paris, Beijing, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Seoul and New Delhi. Sujata Lochab for DD India.
And hundreds of people participated in Yoga Day celebrations in Gujarat's Rajkot. Every year on 21st June, the world unites to celebrate the International Day of Yoga, which is dedicated to raising awareness about the ancient Indian practice and its benefits for physical and mental well-being. A yoga session was organized at the Indian Coast Guard's air station in Daman. People were seen performing different yoga asanas or postures across the runway. The Indian Coast Guard said that the gathering promoted yoga and meditation, aiming to foster a healthier lifestyle. Eid-ul-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, is being celebrated across India on Monday with immense joy and enthusiasm. Muslims gathered in mosques to offer prayers. It commemorates the act of a father, Prophet Abraham, obeying the diktat of God, who tests his devotion by asking him to sacrifice that which is dearest to him. This Eid also marks the culmination of the rites of Hajj, one of the pillars of Islam, which involves a visit to Mecca and reenacting the events carried out by Prophet Abraham. It marks the end of the Islamic calendar and the beginning of a new year. India's President Draupadi Murmu greeted fellow citizens on the eve of Eid-ul-Adha. In her message, the President extended her greetings and best wishes to fellow citizens and Indians abroad, especially Muslim brothers and sisters. The President said, and I quote, "On this occasion, let us take a pledge to work together for the development and welfare of our nation," unquote. In business news, Asian share markets were mostly softer on Monday as mixed Chinese economic news underlined the country's bumpy recovery, while political uncertainty in Europe soured risk appetites and kept the euro on the defensive. Chinese blue chips were off 0.2% after retail sales topped forecasts by rising 3.7% in May. Other data showed home prices fell at the fastest pace in a decade in May, highlighting the continued strains in the property sector. The People's Bank of China kept its one-year rate unchanged. Japan's Nikkei slipped 1.7%, with investors now facing a 6-week wait to hear details of the Bank of Japan's next tightening steps. And now to all the news from the world of sport. Indian women's cricket team secured a thumping 78-run win over South Africa in its first ODI game in Bengaluru on Sunday. Smriti Mandhana's outstanding century and a clinical bowling performance led by Astha Shobhana played a crucial role as they went 1-0 up against South Africa in the first of the 3 ODIs. Mandhana registered a brilliant century to end her ODI 100 drought, recording a brilliant 6th century and the first in last 2 years, and eventually setting a target of 297 runs. Mandhana also surpassed the 7,000-run milestone in international cricket. An Indian archer, Bhajan Kaur, won a gold medal to help the country earn a recurve women's individual quota place in the final Olympic qualifier in Turkey on Sunday. Third-ranked Bhajan and 9th-placed Ankita Bhakat reached the quarterfinals to ensure a women's berth at Paris. Bhajan stole the spotlight by beating top seed Mobina Falah of Iran in straight sets to win the gold. But the seasoned second-ranked archer Deepika Kumari, who received 2 byes, lost the first match to Azerbaijan's Yelagul Ramzanova 6-4. As the event offers only one individual quota place to a country, India secured the slot through the higher-ranked Bhajan's fine performance. Third seed Katie Boulter fought through a semi-final and final on Sunday to successfully defend her Nottingham Open title. With rain delaying both semis on Saturday, Boulter first edged fellow Brit and 2021 US Open champion Emma Raducanu 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Before seeing off Karolina Pliskova of the Czech Republic 4-6, 6-3, 6-2 in the showpiece match. Boulter clinched a 3rd career title and the 2nd of the season. She won her first of the year in March in the US city of San Diego, remarkably on the same weekend that de Minaur won another title in Acapulco. Jude Bellingham struck in the first half to give England a 1-0 win over Serbia in its Euro 2024 opener on Sunday. England is the runner-up in the 2020 edition and is seeking to finally win a trophy befitting his vast array of attacking talent. After scoring with a header against Serbia, giving the Three Lions a 1-0 lead, Jude Bellingham has now scored England's opening goal of the tournament at the 2022 World Cup and Euro 2024. England is still a side in transition without stalwarts such as Harry Maguire, who is injured, and midfielder Jordan Henderson, who was left out of the Euros, and with several inexperienced players in the squad. England fans celebrated their win over Serbia in their first game, with tens of thousands of supporters roaring them on. Gareth Southgate's Three Lions side made a confident start in Gelsenkirchen.
He now puts England ahead in their opening match after nearly stopped the cross there, Pavlovic, but he just spun it. Serbia 0, England 1. It's looking for England! Across the face of the goal. Serbia, as Alexander-Arnold strikes the wall. Vlahovic.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Up. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You You can scan the QR code on the screen to download it. Okay, let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.